Hello everyone. This is the 24th part of the story, Percy Jackson, the God of Magic. Chapter 116. After my war declaration that shook the foundation of Olympus itself, I started to move my pieces around the table. My first move was to recruit Hades and Persephone, both who immediately accepted to help me out as soon as I told them. Hades specifically jumped at the opportunity to belong to a pantheon that would not shun him. Then, my next move was to do what Luke and Kronos would do in the future, recruiting the minor gods and their children, amongst them Hecate being one of them, as while her children had where to stay, they were usually ignored and forgotten. So with the help of Athena I started to write various letters, telling the minor gods around of the situation and what I was offering. If I won, I offered them the freedom to be with their children. In fact, if I won, it would be mandatory for the gods to take care of their children, to be part of their lives. I didn't really care if they had hundreds of them a year, but if they did, they would have to help their mothers or fathers to raise them. Athena explained that while some gods like her brother Ares don't really have a single parenting bone inside them, most of them, like her, would love to be part of the lives of their children, to actually parent them, but because of Zeus, they had to stay away. While Zeus would usually breaks this rule in order to favor one of his children, like he did with Heracles, and others after him. Athena was very clear that most gods would fight for their children, no questions asked, and that because of that, they would join me, as I offered something they hadn't seen in thousands of years, an opportunity for change. So day by day, I started to send my letters to exchange God, and I already had a list of answers. Persephone, goddess of springtime and queen of the underworld, recruited. Hecate, goddess of magic and witchcraft, declined. Nike, goddess of victory and divine charioteer, recruited. Tyche, goddess of luck and fortune, recruited. Hebe, goddess of youth and former cupbearer of the gods, also known as the daughter of Zeus and Hera, surprisingly recruited. Iris, goddess of rainbow and messenger of the gods, recruited. Hypnos, god of sleep, declined. Thanatos, god of peaceful death, recruited. Morpheus, god of dreams, declined. Nemesis, goddess of balance, retribution, revenge and vengeance, recruited. Eris, goddess of strife and chaos, declined. Eileithyia, goddess of childbirth and midwifery, declined. Heracles, god of bravery and strength, also known as the most famous son of Zeus, surprisingly recruited. I did not see this once come at all. The Muses, goddesses of inspiration, science, arts, poetry and literature, declined. The Charites, goddesses of grace, charm, beauty, splendor and adornment, declined. Ariadne, goddess of labyrinths and paths, declined. Gera's, god of old age, recruited. Melano, goddess of ghosts, declined. Pan, god of the wild, declined. Enyo, goddess of war, conflict and destruction, declined. Phobos, god of fear, declined. Deimos, god of terror, panic, and dread, pending for answer. Eros, god of erotic love, affection and desire, pending for answer. Psyche, goddess of the human soul, recruited. Hymenaeus, god of marriage ceremonies, pending for answer. Ganymede, god of homosexual love and desire, and cupbearer of the gods, pending for answer. Amphitrite, queen of the sea, pending for answer. Triton, god of waves and the navy, divine messenger of the sea, pending for answer. Delphin, god of dolphins, pending for answer. Palemon, god of sharks, harbors and sailors, pending for answers. Chymopolia, goddess of violent sea and storms, pending for answer. Glaucus, god of sailors and fishermen, pending for answer. Keto, goddess of sea monsters, pending for answer. Phorcys, god of deep sea dangers, pending for answer. Achilles, god of the river Achilles, pending for answer. Styx, goddess of the river Styx, recruited. Apparently she was tired of gods making false promises and never going through with them. Acheron, god of the river Acheron, recruited. Circe, goddess of magic and immortal sorceress, recruited. Boreas, god of the north wind and winter, recruited. Zephyros, god of the west wind and spring, recruited. Eurus, god of the east wind and autumn, recruited. Notus, god of the south wind and summer, recruited. Chion, goddess of snow, recruited. Triptolemus, god of farming, pending for answer. Despoina, goddess of fertility and Demeter's cult mysteries, pending for answer. Carmenor, god of harvest, pending for answer. Eubuleus, god of secret swine and clotting, pending for answer. Plutus, god of wealth, recruited. Priapus, god of fertility and the garden. Of course I wasn't going to recruit this piece of shit. He was one of the gods I wanted to kill. Asclepius, god of medicine and healing, declined. Epione, goddess of soothing pain, declined. Hygeia, goddess of good health, cleanliness and hygiene, declined. Aristeus, god of cheesemakers, beekeepers, and rural crafts, recruited. Britomartis, goddess of hunting and fishing nets, pending for answer. Hedone, goddess of joy and pleasure, recruited. To be honest, I was surprised with the list of minor gods that had accepted and or outright haven't rejected my offer. While I did promise a better rule, I was but a child in their eyes, and yet, I already had a small army. Then again, I suppose I have to thank Athena for that. She knew every god and what they hated from the rule of her father and made a letter according to that, increasing the chance of success. She was very good at politics, which was the aspect of war she excelled at. Most of them will want to move their children to you right away, Athena stated, because the moment Zeus finds out, their children will be executed. I looked at Athena, eyes widened in shock. Annabeth, your children. Had she let her children die? Worry not, Athena stated, the moment I spontaneously decided to ally myself with you, I teleported my children to a distant location where Zeus can't reach them, for now, but that won't last long. We need a base to host the hundreds of divine children that are now under your protection, under my protection. Ain't that a terrifying thought? Chapter 117. Setting up a base of operations was harder than I originally thought it was going to be. This particular task had a lot of difficulties to it. Amongst them was finding a place to host hundreds of kids and then setting on protecting measures to avoid Zeus frying the kids to hell. Which is why I decided to scout around the planet to find a good location to start working on it. At least that was my initial plan, because as I was flying about the globe, I felt something that momentarily got my full attention. It was odd, not a good odd, but not a bad odd either. It was, I guess the best way to describe was to say it was vexing. Around the world there were many locations with magical signatures that were quite unique and yet oddly familiar. Why didn't I notice this before? I muttered to myself in mild disbelief. Had I been so blind before that I hadn't noticed this? Then again, I suppose the answer was I never had to extend my senses this far, ever had a reason. And just like that I am curious about it, I chuckled, wondering what were those locations. None of them felt like anything I was used to, and yet I felt I knew the answer. What a perplexing mystery. One that it would have to wait until I found a good location to bring the gods I have somehow recruited. So shaking that thought out of my head, for now, I refocused my full attention on finding a good place to host my revolution, which was not gonna lie. I was starting to see it was borderline impossible. Every country had a pantheon of their own, gods that ruled that territory, making it hard to just come and say this is mine now. So perhaps it was best if I did like Odin and started my base in another realm. There was also the option of hosting all of the kids and their godly parents in Asgard for the duration of the revolution. After all, Odin did say he was going to help me to the best of his ability, and that was within his power. But as Athena had said before I embarked on this journey, it was best to at least try to find a place of our own to build our base. And while I didn't fully trust Athena with anything just yet, she was somewhat right. It didn't cost me anything to try and get the place. Knowing full well Odin and his kingdom were always an option should I fail to secure a location for myself, I decided to expand my search of a base location to other realms, and with that idea in hand, I decided it was best to consult Thor about my current dilemma, and while yes, I knew he wasn't the smartest person I knew, his opinion would most than usually lead to interesting developments. Thor was more than eager to help, and was elated that I had come to him instead of Odin first, as if me coming to him proved I trusted him more than anyone else on his pantheon, which in all honesty was quite accurate considering I trusted Odin but it to the same extent. I knew the Nord king viewed more as a political ally than a friend like Thor does, regardless of that I still trusted him, just not on the same level I trusted his son, which made Thor immensely happy. Our conversation about my dilemma was brief and to the point, but it helped me a lot. Thor suggested something I had been thinking about before coming to him, an idea that I had pushed behind in my list of things to do, one that sounded far-fetched but in reality was a very viable option now, creating a new realm. This was magically very possible, I mean. Olympus is a magical realm where the Greek gods reside, so in theory it was more than possible. The hard part actually making this idea a reality. My magic as of now all revolved around combat or low-level reality warping, so while no doubt I had the power to do so, I didn't have required knowledge, which kicked me back to Odin, the best of the best in this field of expertise, not only because of his extensive magic knowledge, but because he himself had created a realm, the Shadow of Midgard, that now basically served as a prison to hold the big BOI known as a Rotterdam. With that said and done, I teleported back to Asgard where I found Odin waiting for me with a rather smug smile adorning his face. His entire aura basically said, "I knew you would come to ask me how to solve your problem. Sometimes he behaves like a big overpowered child." One that is usually correct. Taking a deep breath, I proceeded to explain the smug Norse king what I wanted. "So, let me see if I get this straight." Odin hummed, his eyes narrowing for a brief moment. "You want to create a magical realm where your allies can reside, right?" At this I nodded. "Sure, why not? That's a solution as good as any," the Norse king shrugged. "So, any ideas where to start?" I asked him as curiosity started to surge within me. It was not like him at all to be so nonchalant with his answers. Normally he would usually ask for something in exchange for his help, be it small or big that depended of his mood. But I was not going to remind him of that. I take what I can and if that is free I am happy, of course. This didn't mean I wasn't curious as to why he wasn't asking for something right now. "Well," Odin sighed, putting his index finger on his beard, "kill something big, and use its biomass and magic to create what you want." That's what I did. Something big. Ain't that helpful? Does I don't know, a god would do the trick, a minor god for example? Well, the stronger the being you select to be your sacrifice, the bigger your realm will be. For example, in my case I killed Ymir and well, with his body I created a replica of Midgard, Odin answered. "What god did you have in mind?" he inquired. "Nobody anyone would miss," I answered in a rather cold tone. Heck, it even surprised me. Weird. "Priapus got it," Odin snorted. "How the fuck did? Don't question it, Adam. His power alone should be enough sacrifice to give you a realm of decent proportions, maybe of the size of a big city." Good, Priapus was already in my list of shitty people to kill. His death giving me something was just a bonus. Chapter 118. Finding Priapus was super easy, barely an inconvenience thanks to Athena who gave me his current whereabouts as soon as I asked her. Now all I had to do was kill my first god, and what best target than the god that tried to rape Hestia a few thousand years ago. Teleporting to where Athena had told me I would find the god I wanted, I could almost feel my heart almost beating out of my chest with trepidation. Ba-dum ba-dum, ba-dum ba-dum, ba-dum ba-dum. My heart rate was accelerating rapidly and beating loudly. as the idea of snapping the neck of this shitty excuse of a god settled in. It took me a few minutes to actually find him, even with Athena's directions, but there he was tending to a garden. "Who are you?" Priapus asked, wary as he should be. "A name has no meaning to a dead man," I replied, and this was more than enough to send the message I intended to send, because as soon as those words left my mouth, Priapus attacked. He quickly dashed in front of me and struck me violently in the head with a shovel, but it had no effect whatsoever. It felt as if he had punched me with a pillow. This in turn made me smirk at him. I kinda felt unbreakable. I knew I outclassed him, but this just made this kill all the more enjoyable. The son of Aphrodite and Dionysus retreated quickly after seeing his attack had no effect, but I was not gonna let him escape, so I pursued the god. It took me less than a second to catch up to him, and once I did, I tried to bash his head to the ground with a straight punch, but unfortunately I had underestimated the god a bit, for he clearly saw my punch coming, and was able to dodge it as he leapt into the sky. I suppose this made this all the more fun. As of now I was using a very small part of my power, and if I went all out I could very well kill him in a second, but where was the fun in that? Besides, Odin said I needed his body. Good, I laughed as the very earth around us shook as my power fluctuated. Under emotional distress it was hard for me to keep my power in check, and the sheer emotion of disgust and excitement I was feeling was pushing my control to the limit, forcing my power into a chaotic state for a brief moment before once again I managed to rein it in. This of course didn't go unnoticed, if the face of Priapus was anything to go by. "I don't know what I did to be on your bad side, but please let's talk it out," Priapus offered. "You hurt Hestia," I stated as I looked up to the god flying above the ground. In response, the god's eyes widened in surprise and something akin to terror, before he clenched his fists and in a primal scream he focused his entire being on releasing all his full power. Gritting his teeth, he let his entire body change into his divine form, the first change being his body being enveloped in pure light. After that his stature changed, growing exponentially, his entire body showing various runes that connected to one another written in Old Greek. But most importantly, his power was multiplied rapidly as the transformation finished. "Is that all?" I asked, and the god growled in annoyance. "I can see you don't know how to tap into this form yet, so I still have a chance," Priapus cried, as he rushed at me with newfound speed. Poor idiot, while he was indeed correct, and I had yet to figure out how to access my divine form, the power I possessed outmatched him entirely, but I was like a cat. I loved playing with my prey. With devastating power, the now 30 feet tall god threw a punch at me, which by simply increasing my power output a bit, I managed to parry easily with the palm of my hand. But I had begrudgingly admit, this time he had actually packed a punch, a very weak one, like a bedridden mouse that is terminally ill, but can still bite someone. It was both a surprising and sad development. What actually surprised me though was his newfound speed, because while his power had increased maybe a 50% compared to when he tried to shovel me to the afterlife, his transformation changed his speed drastically. He had impressively become much quicker, not enough to outspeed me, but enough to make me wonder how fast would Hermes be if this little shit was this fast after showing how true power. "This is your trump card?" I asked, as he continued his assault. It was actually quite funny, seeing me, a normal-sized person by human standards, swatting his attacks that by all logical means should be crushing me. "Well, time to end this, don't you think?" I muttered. Priapus jumped back, changing his positioning, and launched a beam of pure energy at me, but I stood there, receiving the attack head-on, emerging from the pitiful attack completely unscathed. Was that what people call going all in? I asked as I slowly started walking towards the god, who had begun to panic. He could clearly see he was outmatched, and in fear decided to charge a more powerful attack. As he charged abnormally high amounts of mana on his hand, I continued my advance, step by step. "This will kill you." Priapus hissed, and I smiled as he unleashed the full power of his attack. The attack was both powerful and somewhat fast at the same time, but it was nothing in the great scheme of things. So with a single hand and a bit mana I stopped the attack a few inches away from me, and with a quick upward movement of my arm, I forced the attack to deviate from its path, flying into outer space. It didn't, I pointed out, as Priapus knelt on the ground, trembling, his breathing shallow, his eyes lifeless. Chapter 119. Priapus' point of view. What could I do? To say I was distraught was selling short the despair I was feeling. Even my best and most powerful technique had been ridiculed. The fates had foretold I would die for my sin, but why so soon? If only my mother or father were here, they would take care of him, they would protect me, but they weren't here. I was alone, facing the man that was born to end my life. No. Prophecies can be avoided. I refuse to die like a rat. You done putting your shit back together? Adam asked, his eyes devoid of emotion. Something was changing within him. At first I saw anger in his eyes, and a lot of hate, but now, nothing but pleasure in my despair. I doubted he was fighting for Hestia any longer, at least no entirely. Yes, I stated, a new look on my face. I was determined to break this prophecy. I refused to die for a mistake I made a few thousand years by picking the wrong girl too. Taking a deep breath, I clenched my fists with a violent burst of air. My divine golden aura reappeared with more power than ever before. My power had increased, my determination was pushing me forward. I was going to win this. With a shout I lunged at the young god, who was still smiling at me, looking down on me, as if I was nothing but a mere fly on his way waiting to be swayed away. This thought infuriated me. With pure rage coursing through my divine form, I threw a punch at him, which he blocked with a single finger. That shouldn't be possible. Shaking that thought of my head, I threw a second punch, which was again stopped by a single finger, before he teleported above me. Pardon me, it sickens me when I am looked down at by someone weaker than me. Adam smiled, this brat, just how strong is he? With a primal roar I lunged at him, launching a very random array of attacks, from kicks to punches, even mana-based attacks. But no matter how strong or unpredictable my attacks were, they were all blocked. But what really terrified me was that Adam was not even fazed by them. He simply stood there blocking my attacks with a bored expression. It was as if he was an indestructible wall I could simply not break through, no matter how much power I had. I felt like a cup of water trying to drown an ocean of despair. No. I refuse to die. I have things to live for. I won't die. I can't. I don't want to. No. 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 With newfound strength I redoubled my efforts, but even then nothing changed. In fact, the bastard had not even noticed anything different in my attacks. He really was unfazed by any change. But I refused to give up, so I continued my assault, until he caught my arm with his human-sized hand and with a smile started to squeeze. Immediately I screamed in pain. Who would have thought an arm could bend this way? What an elating concept. It most definitely needs further testing, he chuckled. When it hit me, no amount of determination, willpower, or anything along those lines would help me against this monster. He was unstoppable, a force of chaos, one that I had no means to stop. In pure terror I ripped the arm he was holding and ran away. If I managed to escape, Mom would help me, Dad would protect me, they would fix this, like they did before, they would. But when I had finally thought I had escaped, and had allowed a small smile to form in my face, as the thought of my parents protecting me, Adam suddenly landed in front of me, laughing. In shock I stopped short. Escape was never an option, at least fighting you would have died like a man. Then again, you are no man, Adam stated coldly, and before I had any time to react his hands shot forward as he quickly grabbed me by the neck, his corrupted mana expanding through my body. Immediately I realized what this monster wanted to do. He wanted to choke me to death, which is why his mana had infected my body, stopping my natural regeneration. I could tell this much, the signs were clear. My inability to breathe and my no longer existing regeneration were strong giveaways. In terror, I desperately tried to break free from his hold, punching his arms and face with all my might, but nothing seemed to faze him. In fact, he was enjoying my slow suffering, and as my divine form gradually weakened, turning me back into a human-sized god, I didn't stop. I continued to fight for my life as tears streamed down my face in pure agony, and during my last few seconds of consciousness and struggle, all I saw was his eyes glowing dark in delight, and something akin to the void welcoming me in them. After that, I heard a snap, followed by the sweet embrace of death. Why was I even fighting to begin with? At least in death, I'm safe from him. Atom point of view. I had enjoyed way too much what I had done. It felt liberating, pleasurable, it was rather terrifying, but I suppose I had gotten what I wanted. I had killed Priapus, and now all I had to do was have Odin to help me create a new realm. I stopped on my tracks, as I felt a new presence appear. Dionysus. I could feel his anger and sorrow. You are a monster. Had I been so focused on the battle I had failed to notice some gods had picked up what I had done. Perhaps, I shrugged. I will strike you down for what you did, brat. Dionysus growled, and I chuckled, so don't even think of begging or apologizing, for I have no sympathies for monsters like you. That last part had, I am not gonna lie, had touched a very sensitive nerve. Apologize? I laughed bitterly. Why would I apologize for being a monster? Had any of you ever apologized for turning me into one? Chapter 120. I eyed Dionysus for a second before I started laughing, not entirely sure why I was laughing, but I was. Dionysus, while I would love to kill you, I have better things to do. Dionysus growled, his hands clenching so tight gold ichor was dropping from them. You killed my son, and you think I will let you get away with this? The god of wine screamed, godly power drowning the area. At that I scoffed. You don't have much of an option, I remarked. I know it's hard to believe, but I'm stronger than you. By a big margin, you stupid drunk bastard. Now. I winked at him. Don't you miss the days the worst I did was pranking someone? Ah, those were the days, I chuckled dreamily. I will kill you for what you did. Dionysus screamed, and I sighed, teleporting the corpse of Priapus back to Asgard. I suppose I can spare some time, I smirked at him. Now be sure to make this a fun game for me, even if the result will be the same. I mean, like father, like son. Dionysus's divine aura started to change as he began to utter a deep growl of despair. Did he really love Priapus this much? I will make you pay. Dionysus hissed as an incredibly superior aura compared to that of his son erupted around his body, and this I smirked. Perhaps fighting him was going to be fun. After all, his power emanating from him was a few leagues above his son. That's rather impressive. I didn't expect such power from a drunk bastard, I admitted. I'd say now you actually have a chance, not of winning, of course, but of making this fun. I grinned. Make this fun? Dionysus repeated angrily. I will soon show you the error of your ways, child, for you will tremble before me. Your worst nightmare. I eyed the god skeptically at this, which seemed to only get him angrier. By all means, make me tremble, I invited. I was not one to shy away from a challenge. In response, the drunk god began to power up once again as his body began to grow, his aura even stronger than before. Was this the power of having access to your divine form? As his power rose, the earth began to tremble on his waking, with the ground beneath him cracking with each violent push of his aura. This continued for a while until his godly metamorphosis finally ended. His divine form was different to his natural self. He was no longer a fat bastard. He now looked like a fucking gym rat. Ready to die? Dionysus asked, his voice carrying a hint of overwhelming confidence. Ready to die? Pfff adorable, I snorted as I took a fighting stance, glaring at my adversary. With a smile on my face, I was the first to move, dashing quickly at Dionysus, who remained unmoving, waiting for me. Eager to appease the drunk bastard, I teleported in front of him, delivering a powerful mana blast to his face. The impact resonated throughout the area, pushing him back, but not dealing that much damage, rather impressive. I had to say I was surprised. In response to my attack, Dionysus shot a mana blast of his own, that I barely managed to dodge. The attack grazed me and sliced into my cheek, that was now dripping gold purplish ichor. It seemed I would have to take the drunk bastard a bit more seriously. Dionysus scoffed, apparently angry at the fact his attack had not killed me, and started to throw an endless chain of attacks that I skillfully dodged, weaving through his blows and deflecting them with my mana. He was strong, but I was more. This continued for a few minutes, with Dionysus increasing his power bit by bit as time progressed until he reached his limit. Unfortunately for him, I was far from reaching mine. Is this the power of one of the 12 Olympians? I laughed. So far, I am not impressed. I winked as I dodged his assault. Bastard! Dionysus spat. You know? You are not wrong, I chuckled. I was a bastard, after all. Dionysus growled, noticing his assault was leading to nowhere, and teleported away, disappearing from my sight. This, of course, was a really bad path he had chosen. I was above all, even if I didn't show it that much, was a mage, and thanks to that I able to follow any spells with ease, including his magical movements, without too much difficulty. But my overconfidence was one of my faults, for when I finally found where he was, I found myself face to face a huge ball of molten energy, 10 times my size. Shit. As the mini sun struck me, Dionysus laughed mockingly. Do you think me to be such a fool, child? I know you are a mage. And if there is something all mages have, is the sin of pride. Now suffer for your hubris. You know what? That's funny coming from a Greek god. I chuckled as I tried to push the attack back, but no matter my effort, I was unable to overcome the violent ball of mana with my current strength. If I went all out, sure. But I was determined to toy with Dionysus, and toy with him I would. Another thing about mages that you apparently don't know, moron. We can teleport. And teleport other things too. At that I teleported the attack from me, putting the massive ball of mana that resembled a sun behind him, allowing it to smash into the clueless god, exploding in a massive burst of light, followed by a scream of agony. You brat! Dionysus hissed, his body battered by his own attack. Poetic, I tell you. I mean, can you really blame me though? The one thing we mages are known for is for teleporting and saying you shall not pass, and yet you forgot one of those. I chuckled, much to his anger. I will avenge the death of my son. Dionysus growled, but at this point he looked like a desperate idiot trying too hard. You will die trying, I stated flatly. This marks the end of part 24 of the story Percy Jackson, the God of Magic. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.